Okay, so you guys have sent in a really fascinating collection of stuff, all focusing on the latest in crypto. And specifically, what's going on with Donald Trump,
Uh-huh.
the world of stablecoins,
Hmm.
and as always, the SEC. You know how it goes.
Yeah.
So our mission today is pretty straightforward. It's to extract the crucial insights from all this material so
Hmm.
you can, get up to speed really fast and start to make sense of what's happening and what it all means.
Got it.
And it seems like the heart of it all is this recent YouTube transcript that really gets into the nitty-gritty.
Sounds good. Let's dive in.
All right, let's unpack this thing.
So yeah, the crypto space is definitely, a buzz right now
Oh, yeah.
with, political statements and new technologies,
Right.
stable coins, and then you've got the regulatory landscape shifting all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So everybody was kind of holding their breath waiting for this big crypto announcement from Trump, right?
Yeah.
The rumor mill was going crazy with all sorts of possibilities. Like maybe he'd say something about eliminating capital gains tax on crypto,
Mm.
or even like the U.S. government starting to buy Bitcoin for its reserves.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, the initial reaction was kind of like,
Yeah.
a little bit of a letdown on the news front.
I think that's fair, yeah. In terms of like
Right.
concrete outcomes, there wasn't any like major policy shift or
Yeah.
anything super crazy about Bitcoin holdings or whatever.
Exactly. No huge surprises. But T, and this feels kind of important, he did double down on that whole thing about making the U.S. the leader in Bitcoin
Right.
and, quote, make crypto great again, which,
Mhm.
he's said similar stuff before. So
Yeah.
what makes this time any different?
I think, while the specific things he said weren't necessarily new, it's really about the context and the action of putting that message out there.
Okay.
Like he specifically recorded this video to be played at a digital asset conference.
Right.
That's pretty deliberate. Like he's
Yep.
engaging with the crypto community directly and sending a signal.
Uh-huh.
It suggests that he's really focused on this sector and might be in a position to do something big soon.
Right.
Even though the impact right now isn't huge,
Right.
the fact that he keeps saying this, and specifically at a crypto event, means there's a strategy there.
Got it.
And, maybe this is just laying the groundwork for more concrete policies in the future, especially when you consider.
Right, right. It signals that this isn't just some random idea floating around in his head. It's something he's actively thinking about and wants the crypto world to know about.
Exactly.
And for you, someone who's trying to stay on top of everything efficiently,
Right.
this highlights the fact that even when an announcement doesn't have a big immediate impact,
Mm-hmm.
it can still give you valuable clues about where things might be headed.
Definitely.
Okay. So moving on from the potential headlines that didn't actually happen, the source material then starts talking about stablecoins.
Okay.
What's the need to know here?
Well, the emphasis on stablecoins seems to be a more concrete part of what he wants to do. Trump specifically talked about making a framework and really supporting stablecoins in the U.S.,
Mm-hmm.
which is interesting, especially when you compare that to all the skepticism from the crypto community,
Right.
and apparently within Trump's own circles, too,
Yeah.
about a central bank digital currency, a CBDC.
Makes sense, right? One of the big ideas behind crypto is decentralization.
Exactly.
So the idea of a digital currency controlled by the central bank
Yeah.
doesn't really sit right with a lot of people in the crypto space.
Nope.
Okay, so why is this apparent support for stablecoins considered a good thing? I mean,
Okay.
some people might see more government involvement as a red flag, so why is this different?
Well, I think the support for stablecoins is seen as positive because it could actually boost innovation
Okay.
and provide a more stable way to do transactions within the crypto world
Right.
without, the whole centralized control thing that people worry about with CBDC.
I see.
Basically, it allows for assets that are pegged to the US dollar to operate under clear regulations, and that could bring in more traditional financial institutions.
Right.
And make regular people more confident about using crypto.
So that could lead to more people using crypto for everyday stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. More adoption and more practical uses.
Interesting. And this leads us to a really crazy stat that jumped out from the source material.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently Tether, which is the biggest stablecoin out there, is now the 7th largest holder of U.S. Treasuries.
Wow.
As of 2024, that's a pretty surprising level of influence.
It is. To give you an idea, Tether holds more U.S. Treasuries than entire countries like Canada, Mexico, Taiwan,
Whoa.
Germany, Switzerland, even. They're getting close to the levels held by the UK.
That's nuts.
It shows that stablecoins, especially Tether, are not messing around.
Yeah.
They're major players in traditional financial markets,
Right.
basically acting like huge investment funds with all those U.S. government bonds they're buying up.
So we have to start thinking about them differently, right? It's not just about them being digital versions of the dollar. They're having a big impact on the whole financial landscape.
Yeah.
And this raises a really interesting question that the transcript brings up.
What's that?
Could this huge amount of U.S. treasuries held by Tether be a reason why Trump is so keen on supporting stablecoins? Like, is there a connection between all those treasury holdings and wanting to see the stablecoin market grow?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
While the source doesn't give us a definite answer,
Right.
just the sheer size of Tether's U.S. Treasury purchases suggests that there's something going on between the stablecoin market and traditional finance
Yeah.
that could be influencing policy decisions. This is where it gets really fascinating.
Absolutely. It makes you wonder about all the stuff happening behind the scenes and potential consequences we haven't even thought about yet.
Right.
Okay, let's shift gears now and talk about the SEC.
Okay.
It sounds like they've been pretty busy too.
Yeah, definitely. And this is super important for understanding how things are changing. So the SEC recently confirmed that proof-of-work mining, which is how Bitcoin validates transactions,
Right.
and Bitcoin itself are not securities.
Huh.
And while that might seem obvious to people who are deep in the crypto world,
Yeah.
it's actually a pretty big change from how they were approaching things before.
Right, because under Gary Gensler, it felt like they were looking at almost everything in crypto as a potential security,
Exactly.
which created a lot of uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
And, like the source said, probably slowed down innovation.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because when things are so unclear,
Right.
it's hard for projects to operate and for investors to know what's allowed.
Yeah.
So this confirmation that Bitcoin and proof-of-work mining aren't securities provides some much-needed clarity
Okay.
for a really fundamental part of the crypto ecosystem.
And this wasn't the only clarification they made, was it?
No, you're right. The source mentions that the SEC has been dismissing a bunch of cases lately.
Yeah, like a whole wave of dismissals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's another big sign that they're changing their enforcement strategy.
So what's the most notable example of this?
Well, the one they highlighted was the dismissal of the case against Ripple just the day before.
Ah, Ripple. So that has implications that go beyond just Ripple itself. Right. I'm trying to connect the dots here.
So the SEC initially argued that XRP, which is Ripple's cryptocurrency,
Right.
was a security because of things like initial coin offerings, or ICOs, where new crypto projects sell tokens to raise funds,
Uh-huh.
and aftermarket sales by the founders.
Yeah.
Now, those are things that a lot of crypto projects do.
Okay.
So if those criteria aren't holding up in court anymore,
Mhm.
which is what the Ripple dismissal suggests,
Yeah.
it means that a huge chunk of the crypto market is probably going to be considered non-securities.
So this is a big deal, not just for Ripple.
Right.
It could pave the way for a ton of other projects to move forward more easily.
Exactly.
Now, the source even lists a bunch of other entities and areas where the SEC has been dismissing cases. Can you give us some highlights?
Sure. So these dismissals are happening all over the crypto world.
Okay.
We've seen it with NFTs that have been sold.
Okay.
The SEC seems to be backing off from calling those securities, which is good news for creators and marketplaces.
Right.
Big exchanges like Kraken and Gemini have also gotten dismissals,
Uh-huh.
as have NFT marketplaces like OpenSea.
I see.
And then you have platforms like Coinbase and Robinhood, which let people trade crypto.
Yeah.
They've also had cases dismissed.
Wow.
And the trend even extends to specific projects and companies like Tron, Uniswap, and even Consensus, which is the company behind MetaMask.
That's a pretty broad range.
It is.
Hmm.
This whole pattern of dismissals really shows that the SEC is shifting gears.
Right. It seems like the regulatory environment is becoming less hostile and more clearly defined.
That's a good way to put it.
Now, all of this is happening while the market's going pretty wild.
Yeah.
Bitcoin briefly hit $87,000 before dropping back down to around $84,000.
Crazy swings.
What's driving all this volatility?
Well, a lot of the big swings in Bitcoin's price are connected to what the source calls macro stuff.
Macro stuff. Okay.
Basically, things happening in the broader economy,
Right.
like uncertainty about tariffs,
Uh-huh.
inflation numbers,
Yeah.
and the overall mood of the global economy.
I see.
All these external factors can cause huge price changes in assets that are considered risky.
Like Bitcoin.
Exactly.
But here's something interesting from the source material.
What's that?
BlackRock, the massive investment firm.
Yeah.
They're saying that a recession could actually be good for Bitcoin.
That does seem kind of counterintuitive.
Right. It's not what you'd expect.
It might seem strange at first, but their reasoning is based on what's happened in the past and how central banks react to economic downturns.
Okay.
Recessions usually lead to more liquidity in the economy through things like quantitative easing, where they pump money into the system, and cuts to interest rates.
I see.
And historically, these periods of increased global liquidity have been good for Bitcoin's price.
So they're thinking that even though a recession is obviously bad overall,
Yeah,
the steps taken to fight it could actually help Bitcoin grow.
exactly. The source points out that there's a historical correlation between more liquidity in the system and Bitcoin's price going up,
Interesting.
especially after times when the overall economy has been holding it down.
So the idea is that when there's more money floating around
Right.
and traditional assets seem less appealing because of economic troubles,
Yeah.
Bitcoin starts to look like a good alternative.
As a store of value or an asset with high growth potential.
Okay, that's a really interesting perspective. And could offer some comfort to people who are worried about the current ups and downs in the market.
Right.
The source also talks about how DCA is still really popular among investors.
DCA. Okay.
Dollar cost averaging. It shows that people still believe in Bitcoin's long-term value, even with all the volatility.
Yeah, DCA is basically where you consistently buy a set amount of an asset at regular intervals, no matter what the price is doing.
So the fact that people are still doing that shows they're in it for the long haul.
Exactly. They think Bitcoin is going to go up over time, even if there are some bumps along the way.
Okay, so to sum it all up, it seems like the main takeaway from the source is that even though Trump didn't make a huge announcement or anything,
Yeah,
the underlying trends are actually pretty positive for crypto in the U.S.,
I agree.
especially with how the SEC seems to be changing its approach.
That's a good summary.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like things are moving in a good direction for innovation and adoption in the U.S. There's more regulatory clarity now, thanks to the SEC's actions.
Right.
Continued political engagement.
Yeah.
It all points towards a positive future once the global economy settles down a bit.
All right. So for you listening, the key takeaways from this deep dive into the latest crypto news are, first, Trump's recent announcement may not have been a bombshell, but his continued interest in crypto and his specific focus on supporting stablecoins are definitely things to pay attention to. And maybe even more important, we're seeing a real shift in how the SEC is handling crypto. They've confirmed that Bitcoin and proof-of-work mining aren't securities, and they've dismissed a bunch of cases, which could have a huge impact on the whole crypto space.
Yeah, big time.
Now, the market is still volatile because of all the economic stuff happening in the world, but there's a good argument to be made that future recessions and the way governments respond to them could actually benefit Bitcoin.
Interesting.
And what's really fascinating here is how all these seemingly separate things, political talk, technological advances, regulatory changes, they're all coming together to shape the future of crypto.
Absolutely. And on that note, here's something for you to think about.
Okay.
Given this new clarity about regulation and the potential impact of the economy on crypto, what new opportunities or challenges might we see? For wider adoption of cryptocurrencies? How might crypto become a bigger part of our everyday lives and the global economy?
That's a great question. Something to ponder until our next deep dive. Definitely until next time.